Sinestro, Year of the Villain, issue 1, written by Mark Russell, art by Yildari Sinar. So Matt read this. I was planning on reading it, and then when I looked at the first couple of pages, I really wasn't feeling it. And obviously, Mark Russell is someone that I've come to respect as a writer, and that was the main reason why I was going to read it. I think just the idea of all these Year of the Villain tie-ins right now is just making me feel a little bit deflated, and I'm just not into them. Trying them right now. Maybe I'll change my mind as time goes on. But Matt read it, so Matt can tell us if this was worth
if we should have read it.
Yeah, because obviously this was a larger book. This was a $5 bigger book.
So I got this because of Mark Russell, because so far I've really enjoyed what he's written. And there's a Mark Russell book to the T, like, because it gets like, Sinestro going into space and trying to stop these big giant aliens from destroying stuff, that Lex needs, to basically being a mirror on society. Like, I almost feel like Mark Russell could write a series of Black Mirror comics, and they would fit right in. And so this one's about so Sinestro. He has the ultraviolet, harnessed power, and Lex sends him out into space because there's these group of aliens called the Paragons, and they're kind of like Celestials, but they're not as big, or even those ones from No Justice. But they're basically you can't kill them because they regenerate too quick. So Lex is like, hey, Sinestro, I want you to take care of this with your ring. Like, this is the type of stuff you used to deal with the Green Lantern Corps. And don't fail me. Like, I'm getting a very big Emperor vibe from Lex in this issue. Because he has he's trying to spread the word of doom, and you have these Paragons going around and destroying these worlds. And the first world is where there's this God Emperor that's completely taken over. It's called Planet Alpha Ceti 5. And the Paragons are just taking it there to them, and they end up completely destroying the planet. So you get a flashback to Lex. That's where Lex tells him, you need to get out ahead of this. So Sinestro ends up finding out that the reason they can't be killed is that there's these tiny little, like almost a universe in of itself, of beings called microns, and they only exist for like nanoseconds. But in that nanosecond, they give everything in their life to these Paragons who they worship as gods. So Sinestro decides, like, well, in order to defeat the Paragons, we have to, go talk with the Microns. So he basically uses the ultraviolet ring to split kind of his essence, to go to each of the Paragons to talk with the Microns there. And while he's there, he ends up basically, in the first one, finds out that they worship him like gods, and him trying to make them not believe in them only makes them double down. So he has to rethink about this, because that plan didn't work. He thought he'd weaken the Paragons, but the Microns just reinvigorated them even worse. So they destroy this next planet. Lex gets upset at him and is like, you're supposed to be doing this, don't fail me again. And so Sinestro looks at the tiny versions of himself and go, you need to rethink about this. So they do. So basically he goes in and poses as a doctor, which I think he was on Korrigar before, so there's not much of a reach. And he ends up basically making them question the Microns by expanding their life. So instead of lasting only a couple nanoseconds, he expands them. So now they have time to do other things that's just not in service of the Paragons. And in doing that, he gives them the sense of freedom. So they stop repairing the Paragons. And once they do that, they're easily defeated. But in expanding their life, he completely uprooted the culture of the Paragons to where it ends up looking a lot like ours. To where now that they had more time, it allowed them to develop music, and it looks like the 60s a lot. And then they start, fighting amongst each other about if the Paragons exist and if they should be serving them. And there's this whole talk show of two of them about, where culture has gone. And in doing so, he killed God and killed the Paragons and made them vulnerable. So once they were vulnerable, he had talked one of them into maintaining the Paragons, and that was the one society that kept them. So now Lex has a Paragon to use, and in doing that, basically Sinestro had become this god figure amongst them because he opened their eyes of what it meant to be a Micron. And now this older generation of Microns in this, who had freedom, this older generation now looks at the newer generation that they're lazy and they don't want to do anything, and that they need to believe in the Paragons more like they did, even though that they got to, have their freedom. So it was like this real good take on boomers versus millennials and how they're kind of the same, but the boomers look down on the millennials for doing what they did. And now Lex has a Paragon to do with what he wishes. But it was a really fun issue. It was a nice little, I feel like this could have been an annual instead of I don't know where it would have fit in. But it's Mark Russell doing what Mark Russell does. And the whole bit about the Microns, it reminded me of, there's an episode of Futurama where Bender ends up with this society that lives on him in space, and they're all microscopic, and they end up going to war with each other at one point over which is, the true Bender. But I think there's a Twilight Zone in that too, so of that theme. But I really enjoyed it. I mean, the art by Sinner it's fine. It does a lot of cool space things, but it's nothing amazing. It gets the job done. But yeah, I do recommend it if you like, especially I know Pete likes sci-fi a whole lot. Connor's up there, but I don't know as much. But yeah, it was definitely worth the $5, I think. So, but yeah, I'd like to see Mark Russell do more of these two. I don't necessarily want him on a full series, right? I wouldn't want him jumping into Batman and telling these kind of morality plays. But if he were to do a story in an annual or a one shot, I think it'd
from
be
what
really
I gather, this is kind of what his Flintstones was like.
Yeah.
But again, it's Flintstones. Sure, why not? I wouldn't want it in the main Batman book. I agree.
Yeah.
I think what you do with them maybe is you let him basically get what King does and give him the 12-issue books and say, hey, pick a character and do a 12. That's essentially what he's doing Wonder Twins, I suppose, when you think about it. But
or like what they, with Tom Taylor, where they give him Injustice, the digital first sort of thing. Just kind of free reign to do what you want in those.
However, we are more than ready for Taylor to take on some main ongoing books. I'm just putting that out there.
But yeah, I mean, I was real cautiously optimistic just because I really like Sinestro and I like Mark Russell. I had no idea that's where the story was going. And once I got halfway through and I could kind of see what he was doing and basically making them doubt the existence of God and what that means to society and how he becomes with his science because he expanded their life, he becomes what's important. So now the Microns are obedient to him, which means now the Paragon is obedient to him. And it's just, again, he writes Black Mirror, the comic books, I feel, at times. So, yeah. I'm going to rate it. I'm going to give it an 8. It was really solid.